Hello,
Hello.
recording now. So if you could just begin with introducing yourself, just your name, what you do, what you studied in college,
Yeah,
anything you feel like sharing.
I'm Jonathan Verbeck. I'm 23, graduated from BU with a bachelor's in music theory and composition in 2021, and now I work in a grocery store.
Yep. So we're gonna start with an easy question. So if you think back to your childhood, did you have any activities that you used to do with your family growing up? Like something that you really liked to do with your family, something that was like a common activity that you did with your family?
Uh, okay, yeah. Um, easy answer. We watched TV a bunch. There were, yeah, we watched certainly things like together as a family. So one was we watched The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and other typically comedy. So seasonal activities, I think I remember like the most, yearly like pumpkin picking and fall festivities, pumpkin carving, gingerbread houses, and yeah, those sorts of seasonal things. But yeah, sailing once we got a little bit older with my dad, and other aquatic things, I suppose.
Did you have a favorite activity?
Um, that's yeah, good question. Yeah, probably like probably when I was yeah when we first started like sailing and such. That was yeah just something like a very powerful experience, I suppose. Yeah, being out on the water. Yeah, I'll say probably that. Yeah.
Yeah. And who were you doing these activities with? Like who in your family?
Oh yeah. So it's just yep, my dad, my mom, my brother, and I.
Mm.
My brother's 3 years older, and yeah, we started sailing school at the same time when my dad was gifted a boat, and um, ironically, although my brother has like a career in sailing now, he stopped sailing after the first year. I kept doing it, um, and yeah, so a lot of those things were with my dad. We got very involved with the sailing club, so the whole family would sort of yeah get involved. Then the four of us.
Mm. So do you still do this activity sometimes when you go back to your family on Long Island?
No,
No.
no.
Would you like to be doing it?
Uh, yeah, yes. Although, yeah, boats are expensive,
Mm.
and yeah, it's kind of like moved on. Like I said, my brother has like a career that involves sailing now, and he lives on a sailboat, so he still sails. I sail with him whenever I have the opportunity to, but it's not much of a really family activity anymore. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Do you have maybe any specific times that you like went sailing with your family that is particularly memorable to you?
Um, yeah, I would say, um, well, there was just yeah one incident where the boat went over. That was actually when my brother stopped sailing. He was a little freaked out by the boat capsizing, which was kind of business as usual, I learned. But that's definitely very memorable. And so, but yeah, there's definitely just like maybe hard to pinpoint an exact one because like the summer just seems like a smear of these like sailing memories. But like, yeah, raft ups with the sailing club, everybody would like tie their boats up together in the river and just have like snacks and cook and whatever on the water. So uh, that's as far as like the positive memories go. Yeah, that's tons of things like that. Yeah.
So if you could maybe think back to one of these times, or just like in general, like
Yeah.
think about that you were back in this experience as a child, how would you describe who you were at that moment? Like how were you as a child, if you could describe yourself? And
Okay.
if that's a little bit hard to do, maybe try to think about if like your parents have described you in a certain way, like, oh, you were such a blank kid,
Yeah.
like if you can think of from an external point of view how you were as a child, if that's a little easier than being
Okay.
introspective.
Definitely energetic, um, uh, hyper, I would even say. Um, always sort of, I was into a lot of different things. So I found that even when I was, yeah, even like when sailing, my mind wasn't always on the sailing. It was on other things I enjoyed. Um, yeah, like playing music, eventually like a little older, it's like playing video games. But yeah, so probably just like pretty hyper, both like physically and mentally. Um, but also, yeah, definitely personable. I, compared to my brother, I enjoyed like the more social aspects of the specifically sailing. I liked the events where people were around. Um, just yeah, uh, funny, trying to just enjoy uh, kind of like, yeah, and probably a lot of the time, this isn't obviously unique to me, but like blissfully ignorant, uh,
Mhm.
just like having fun almost in like my own world of uh, not in a way of like shutting out the world, but like, yeah, just having fun in my own world, I guess. Yeah.
So you said you were hyper both like physically and like what was your interests and stuff is what you
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
like, yeah, thinking to like, I often find, I wonder sometimes if some of my memories of these things are clouded up, because even when I was at those things, I wasn't probably so present. So my like thinking about other things, thinking what I was going to do later, thinking about depending on like what age, like a project. Um, if I was very young, probably just thinking about Star Wars. So yeah.
So when you have like you had all of these different interests that you're always thinking about, did you have any like aspirations as a child? Like anything that you always went back to, anything you wanted to do that you thought about maybe when you were a grown up that you wanted to continue doing it?
Yeah, I think like the earliest thing I can remember is like wanting to
Oh my God.
wanting to write. There we go.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
wanting.
I hate
It's good. You've been so still. Good posture. Uh, yeah, probably
gonna
writing.
be in the recording.
It'll
Sorry.
be, it'll no, it's good. It'll be a good
Oh
moment.
my God.
Um, but yeah, like I think when I was really young, I wanted to write books, whatever that meant, to someone like arguably too young to really write. Definitely too young to write. But then that eventually kind of like went over to music and sorts of stuff. But yeah, like yeah, this idea of something usually creative, writing, film. I almost completely forgot like filmmaking. Was very very into like making films. Wanted to be a director, um, and yeah, now in my adult life, I still find that I don't often. Maybe I want to more, but I have these ideas like of making like some sort of video or something, and I realized that I could just like you know act on those things. But so yeah, like some form of like creating something, I guess.
So would you say that you got this like, I don't know, creative like aspiration, creative like ideology that you always want to create? Would you say you picked that up from someone in your family, or was that just something that came naturally to you?
Yeah, to say like it was picked up um from someone in my family, like from my mom or my dad, I'm not so sure. I mean, to deny them like the fact that they like created me would be unfair. So definitely like they nurtured it. So I would like they're creative people, but professionally, my mom studied history and then teaching and went into teaching. My dad was in advertising and then moved to teaching, which are both, advertising and teaching are very creative fields, but not so much like this classically creative, I guess, or like this just raw sort of, yeah. But definitely as parents, yeah, they nurtured it, they raised it with what they exposed me to, with how they encouraged it, like, music lessons, film, like summer camps, things like that. So they definitely nurtured it and encouraged it. But I'm not sure if I could say I really, there was like a role model who was
Mhm.
around very often, who was like, yeah, just like creative spirit, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. When I interviewed Jeremy, we kind of connected on this similarity we had growing up, that his dad would like draw with him and his brother. And I was like, oh, my dad did that with me and my
Mm.
sister too. We would like sit down at the kitchen table and like we would draw things. In my case, my dad would be like, we're drawing monsters and we'd like make up some weird creature
Yeah.
together. So can you think of anything like that maybe? Was
Yeah.
anything like that something that maybe got you into creativity? Or maybe not got you into it, but something that like you did with your family that kind of taught you that, maybe subconsciously taught you that creativity is something good to have,
My mom,
maybe?
yeah, my mom would help me. My mom would write with me. Uh, and so before like I really could write, she would like, scribe and make things like neat, then write together. There was times we'd share writing. Uh, so yeah, definitely like kind of like that, like drawing with your dad, like I'd certainly write with my mom. Uh, my dad and I uh, very, my dad, although he's not a musician, is very musical. He really likes music. So through, yeah, in a lot of music I was exposed to came through him, uh, playing Guess the Tune on the radio, which was like in the car. Um, yeah, so I would say those sorts of things stick out.
So you mentioned a few different family members, your mom, dad, and your brother.
Yeah.
Is there someone that you relied on the most growing up out of these people, or would you say maybe it was someone else outside of your family that you relied on?
Um, yeah, I probably, if I had to choose, probably my mom. Uh, yeah, my mom's the mother of two boys. So there's like I don't know, maybe there's not really a thing, but I feel like there is a certain type of mothership to two boys. And so, not to say obviously I didn't rely on my dad, but yeah, probably my mom. Outside of the family, I would say like the nuclear family, like honestly, not particularly. Um, uh, not There were definitely other people from outside of my family who made an impact, but like I wouldn't say that there was some like one person that kind of like consistently someone I really relied on outside of my family.
So can you recall maybe a moment where you like were able to rely on your mom? Like, doesn't have to be, negative, just like any moment where you maybe went to her for advice or anything like that. Were you able to really rely on her?
Um, yeah, like a specific example, I'm not sure. Um, I think I find that I feel more comfortable being open with my mom, um, or also that my mom does something that's good for me, where often she'll know before I say anything, and so she'll often be the one to, like, I almost rely on her to initiate that openness, I guess,
Mm,
because I feel like I won't on my own, and she's got good instincts to know and to, yeah.
mm. So would you say it was like for like emotional matters, like when you were feeling maybe stressed or overwhelmed by things that you kind of relied on her like to notice that in you and to kind of talk to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely many times where yeah, she just seemed to just say something, be the first to say something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So would you say this is the same case now that you know, when you are able to see, because I know you don't live with your parents right now,
Yeah.
but when you are like around them, like would you say that your mom can like pick up on if you are like not in a good like mental state, that she can like right away tell that she needs to talk to you, that she needs to
Yeah.
be there for you? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And she's pretty good, even like over, yeah, over the phone, over texts. Yeah, it's surprising sometimes she can tell just, yeah, like over her text, even. But so yeah, even, yeah, it's still something. I do think now though I am a little bit well, I'm honestly not sure because since um since I like moved out in August 2020, I haven't spent very much time with my parents aside, you know, 2 trips back. Um, so it's hard to really say what it's like now, but yeah, I would say still that reliance still she sort of picks it up, but I think it's like a little bit yeah, I'm a little bit more open now without that.
So if you can maybe think back on your childhood, just like in general, are there any, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but is there any like valuable life lesson that you can say that you learned as a child? I know it's a very broad question, but
Mm. Um, yeah, like maybe kind of the most valuable one, most valuable lesson I think my parents could like, I try to, I use, I feel like I picked it up, and I can also notice it's something that I can, it's something that I sometimes don't see in other people, is just kind of like this attempt to not let others or not so oftentimes it's described as like what other people do, or just events, things in the environment, not to try and let, like to try to not let those change how I act, how I think, like to uh you could say it's to take the high road, but it's not often like that. It's sort of just, yeah, trying to not let things change who you are, what you say, what you do, to, yeah, I guess that
would you
seeing,
say, oh, sorry,
no,
you
no,
can
please.
continue with your,
I guess I was just, yeah, gonna say like seeing my parents who both were very involved with their unions as teachers, and um yeah, like I guess seeing them kind of interact with problems with administrators, parents, things like that, and to, I guess, see them kind of be emotional and frustrated about it at dinner, but then like handle themselves like when it really comes down to it, and not, yeah, so definitely like, yeah, learning through seeing, I guess. Yeah.
yeah. So you learned by like observing your parents.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, they definitely like taught it to whenever I had problems with people growing up, you know, that was always their sort of, you know, mantra. Like don't let the way someone acts change the way you act.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
Would you say part of that is just like being true to yourself also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely something also then encouraged by, you know, like my parents who, you know, like uh who, yeah, encouraged me to do the things that I wanted to do, take music lessons, do certain after school activities. Yeah, at one point my dad, I wanted to try out for Little League, and my dad like helped me train, and then I was like, I don't want to try out for Little League, and then it was just like that, it kind of faded
Mhm.
away. So it was um yeah, definitely a lot of encouragement to like
Mhm.
appreciate myself.
So would you say when you wanted to do like extracurriculars, it was you were the one that took the initiative? Like you decided, I want to do this, and then your parents kind of supported you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think that's the good example is like my wanting to try out for Little League. And so like my dad taking me to the ballpark to like, hit balls, catch balls. But then when I kind of got cold feet, like there wasn't, there wasn't a push. There wasn't a like, well, we spent all this time training, we spent all this time working on it. And maybe I should have been pushed into it, honestly. I don't know, but I think it's better. I could I could audition for the play, or I could do stage crew, or um, you know, at school, whatever. Like yeah.
Were there any times where your parents maybe pushed you to do anything that you maybe didn't particularly want to do that much, or maybe in just like your academics, like did they want you to study more or anything like that?
Definitely in like early high school, like late middle school, early high school, my parents, one of the problems like that we had then was just like they didn't want me playing as many video games as I honestly was. And I remember that there were some talks, there were some conversations, one particularly I think was like my mom sort of said like, don't you remember, you used to like you used to write and practice a lot, and go out on the weekends, play hockey in the dead end, whatever. And then she was like, and you don't do any of that stuff anymore. So I would say like that was really the only time that I like they were kind of encouraging me against my will. Hindsight for me does not have any like grudges against them, and would probably agree and appreciates that. But yeah.
So earlier you said that maybe your dad should have pushed you to keep doing like Little League and stuff. So do you think that you maybe wish that they had taken a different approach with certain things? Or is that just like that like one little thought,
Yeah,
one
I
little
don't
moment?
think, yeah, I don't think that I want, I don't think that I wanted them to take a whole different approach. I kind of only say that because I regret not like actually playing baseball, now that I'm an adult. But like the difference is minimal, I think. I was like pretty young. I think that was before middle school, maybe that was in, I might have been before middle school or just very early middle school. So um uh yeah, I guess I say it only because I wonder if I just kind of got nervous about playing with other kids, and that's why I didn't want to do it. And if maybe I had been pushed to like just join and get over like the anxiety of playing with other kids in a league, then it would have been great. But I guess yeah, like I said, well, my childhood was full of plenty of other things that were encouraged and such. So I guess the answer is no. I wouldn't have wanted my parents to take a completely different approach.
But do you maybe wish that like maybe they could have noticed that you were just like a little nervous about it, and maybe they could have pushed you to do it because they knew you wanted to do it? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to remember because I'm sure they probably did. And I'm sure they probably did push me like, oh, come on, you're just like nervous, you don't want to do it. But I probably resisted a bit much. And, and I guess it's not like, it's not like they caved to everything that I did or didn't want to do. Or just like, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess only now it's kind of like, oh, that's something I would have liked to experience, but I kind of can't remember how I really felt at the time. So
Yeah. So when you had this like time where you were playing too many video games and stuff,
yeah.
did you have any other like maybe like rebellious phases? Like I don't know, like teen rebellion. Like would you say you had like one of those phases?
Yeah, it was definitely like kind of with the video games. And then like playing online, uh, playing online with people, and yeah, just like being up really late, staying up like all night, some like every now and then. So, but honestly, yeah, like as far as rebellion goes, it wasn't very rebellious. I didn't try drinking until I was already in college. I didn't smoke anything. Um, about the craziest late nights I had were just like, yeah, Mountain Dew fueled benders in movies with friends. Um, yeah, so I guess yeah, it was rebellious in the sense of like, yeah, I just kind of wanted to, I just was like in this life of like, yeah, I don't care about doing school, just like playing like video games with people online, and staying up late, but pretty tame for for a rebellious phase. Yeah.
So you would say that there wasn't really anything that maybe you were like rebelling against other than like your own responsibilities. You weren't like rebelling against your parents really. It was more
Yeah,
rebellion against academia.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, like my brother, I think so. Uh, my brother definitely had a more of a rebellious phase where he was rebellious against my parents, but it was mostly against the school and kind of just like my parents, like they're sort of like, well, you have to do it. Um, and because often it was so my brother has dysgraphia, which is not quite dyslexia, but it is like a learning disability. So he was not accommodated very well at all in our public school system. So it's something that my parents, did fight with the school system, but at the end of the day, it would lead to like sort of rebellious acts from my brother. Um, and so I don't know how much of that is like, second child advantage of like kind of having, not to say better parents, but yeah, more like seasoned parents with
Mm.
experience, uh, or just yeah, me growing up and seeing that. Uh, but yeah, so definitely I was like, yeah, my brother was like the rebellious one. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Um,
And you were
yeah,
the
and I think it is probably partially this like second child, youngest child syndrome that
yeah.
get it a little easier. Um, so would you say like how would you maybe describe your relationship with your brother maybe during maybe these times of rebellion? 'Cause for me personally, like when my sister was kind of having these moments of rebellion, like our relationship kind of also got a little tense
Mhm.
because she was like, oh, like you don't get me, like you have it easy because you're the favorite because you're younger. Like she like would
I like how you have the room that the censor really makes you work for it.
God, I really am gonna have to edit this out. I lost my train of thought. So yeah, my relationship with my sister, like it got kind of tense during these times, and like we weren't very close for a lot of like the time that we were both in high school, and we only really started liking each other again when we were both in college. So
Yeah.
would you say your experience is similar or
I don't think so.
no?
Honestly, yeah. I stayed pretty close to my brother.
Mhm.
I didn't really get involved with like the like arguments between my brother and my parents. And honestly, like I kind of felt like, yeah, I always played this role of like I my brother didn't feel like, yeah, I was on my parents' side. So yeah, it was still good. I'd say the most like rebellious part, like time in his life is like he had a Jeep, and like, he could drive, yeah. And so yeah, he like we hung out still,
Mhm.
and it was definitely like we weren't as close because when we were growing up we were obviously in the house together all the time. but then as we got older, it was like we go out and do our own things with friends our own age. But I wouldn't say that it really affected our
Mhm.
relationship much. Yeah.
So he's 3 years older.
Yeah.
So would you say that your relationship was more kind of like a friendly, like a friendship type? Because I know a lot of people who have a like wider age gap might see like an older sibling kind of as like a third parent. Did you have that experience, or was it more just like
It was, yeah, definitely not third
friends?
parent
Mm,
feeling. When I was in, like, my brother never babysat me. Um, I guess like when I first got to middle school, we get home earlier than my parents. I guess my brother kind of babysat, but it was more like they were okay with leaving us alone, and he was just like, he's the older one. So um, but definitely, like, when I think about those times, it wasn't like he felt like he was an authoritative figure, like a third parent. It definitely was like fun. In fact, yeah, like we definitely got up to some shenanigans in those times when we were uh, home after school. So uh, yeah, it was always like, yeah, much like a friendlier, like brotherly. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah.
Would you say it's the same now when you get to see each other?
Yeah, it's a little
Mhm.
bit more like mellow now for sure, but no, it's very similar. Um, I saw him. He was here like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago maybe. Um, and yeah, we rode bikes through the city, uh, which was great because it was like kind of like the thing we used to do. And yeah, it was still this very much like just messing around pretty much. So still the same.
That's nice. Um, so was there ever like a moment where you maybe like went to a friend's house or something and you experienced kind of like a culture shock when you met their family?
Um, yeah, it wasn't honestly much of a culture shock, because I mean it wasn't in a bad way, but yeah, I made friends in fifth grade with one of my is still like one of my closest friends, Harsh. He was born in India. His parents are from India. Although he didn't come from India, his dad worked for Verizon and moved all around. So he was in England. He was in he was all over the place. But he came to our small town. His dad really had no intention of planting there, so they budgeted. They didn't get Long Island's very expensive, as so they got kind of an apartment in like the sort of it was like the cheap apartments in Sayville. And so when I went to his house for the first time, I'd never really been like in these apartments, and you know, I mean they're obviously they're fine, but yeah, they uh it was like a stairway that went up from this front door, and like the stairs were just old, and there was no air conditioning, so in the summer it was brutally hot. um his mother didn't speak much English, and I'd never had a friend at that time who didn't like whose parents didn't really speak English. His dad obviously spoke like English to work for Verizon. And his mother cooked all the time, and so I'm not sure. Like it was that the culture shock definitely is smelling Indian food, especially in a hot apartment. Um, that's like uh, that was definitely like probably the biggest like culture shock of. But no, she like yeah, so it was really playing at his apartment with the neighbors. Some were from Pakistan. So yeah, definitely I kind of, I guess, got exposed to um yeah, like people who weren't white. And so yeah, so it wasn't a culture shock in like an overwhelming way, but
Mhm.
definitely kind of, yeah, like
Yeah,
seeing things that were different. Yeah.
yeah. So sorry if that wasn't completely clear. When I say culture shock, oh, this is interesting anyway. When I say
Okay.
culture shock, I kind of meant like the way that their family is in comparison to yours, that you were kind of like shocked at their family culture, if that makes more sense.
I get,
So
yeah.
if you can, if you want to think of the same friends, like would you say that they had very different family dynamics from your family that
So,
like you were kind of like surprised at? Like just I'll give an example. Like
yeah, yeah.
when I grew up with like immigrant Polish family. So we take off our shoes when we come inside. There's kind of a level of like respect to your parents and your grandparents. So you don't like ever call your parent by like their first name. You don't even call, like you don't say the word you to them in Polish. And like
Mm,
even in English, like my parents would get annoyed if I said you in English because they would like translate it
yeah,
into
yeah.
like the informal. So it's like stuff like that that you there's like a level of like your elders are more respected. And when I met some of my like friends' families who are like many generations like on Long Island, Italian American,
Yeah,
and they walk in to the house, like shoes are on in like the bedroom. Um,
yeah,
like
yeah.
they talk to their parents like, yo, Steve, and then like the dad will respond like, hey, bitch. And like, you know, not every like American family is like this, obviously.
No, I
This
know
is a
what you,
very,
yeah,
you know, but this is like a very casual relationship with the parents and the kids, and like swearing to each other, and it was like totally fine. That was just like their family culture. And when I like experienced that, I was like, oh my God, like what the hell? Like I was like,
yeah.
I'm gonna take my shoes off anyway. You know, like stuff like that. Like if there was anything like that.
Yeah, like, I had, so with Harsh, honestly, like family culture wise, wasn't, very much, we were able to like, we slept over at his house, we did like the things that, all like, all of the boys our age were doing. Um, but I would say for my oldest friends, Jake, uh, he lived in a house down the block, and his grandpa on his dad's side lived there, and so uh, like yeah, and I guess like yeah, his family had like has alcoholism that runs through it, so basically had a grandfather that lived in the house and was like yeah, kind of like, to put it like very like bluntly, was like kind of just a drunk mean old man, um and very stressful, like his dad worked for the MTA, so he had a very stressful job. Smoke the I guess the biggest culture shock with him was the fact that his parents smoked inside. And so like yeah, going into his house and like just there being a very like very thick cigarette smell in the house. Um, yeah, just something, neither of my parents have ever smoked cigarettes, so that was pretty shocking. Um, and like, you know, his dad was a little like his dad was definitely not like abusive at all, but he yelled a little bit more. He yelled a lot. So like that was pretty shocking. So where Jake was used to his dad kind of coming home and yelling about a chore not being done, it was like almost like it was like jarring and a little scary. Other friends um, who just had like a more like open relationship with their parents. There were just I didn't have very many taboos with my parents, but yeah, one of my friends, Luke, just like his family was Catholic, so that was very Catholic. So that was like sometimes shocking, but sometimes also then just the openness that he had with his parents. Some of the like jokes he made at like the age that we were at were was a bit shocking sometimes. Yeah, that's more accurate.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
the other thing you said was like interesting to hear too. It's
yeah.
just not the question, and I should have been more clear about it.
No, no, that's yeah, that's
Um, yeah, the word like culture shock, like on its own, has is what you like thought it was in the context of this question. So it's
yeah.
fine. Um, so if you kind of think based on these experiences with your family, with your friends' families, if you can imagine like if you were to raise a child, whether or not that is in your future plans or not, what lessons or like ideologies that you learned in your childhood would you pass on to them?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's like the golden rule, which is, I guess I kind of left out earlier, treat others the way you want to be treated. And I think that also it kind of is the same, it's a more broad version of the don't let others change who
Mhm.
you are. And so that would kind of be first and like foremost, I think. Um, yeah, and I would also, yeah, just encourage exploration into like hobbies and things without pushing, like encouragement. I think, yeah, if I had a child who played a lot of video games and it got to like an obsessive point, maybe like absolutely like me, I would do the same almost and sort of encourage away from it. Um, encourage it like to be more in moderation. Um, but yeah, I think that would sort of be the main things. Yeah.
Oh my God, I feel like this is definitely like affecting the flow of the interview.
It's not so bad.
Hmm. I mean, that was, I feel like, a good moment for it to turn off.
Yeah.
Like you said what you had to say.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're gonna have kind of a fun question. So if you can travel back in time and see your childhood self, how you have now like kind of been introspective as your childhood self. So now you can, as an outsider, kind of go back and talk to yourself as a child. What would you say? What would you talk about? Doesn't have to be like advice or anything, just be a
Yeah.
conversation.
Um, what, yeah, okay. Advice is like the easiest thing to say, I think. And it would probably be like on that like just like that video game topic of just like to put into perspective of like how much time that is. Um, but I would think that uh I would I would want to, so I feel like when I learned music, obviously everybody who learns music learns like technically first, you learn how to play an instrument, and things like that. And I didn't really feel like I practiced as much as I like absolutely should have. Mostly because it felt like work, and that prevented me from, you know, uh, really like, yeah, from really just enjoying, like, from really practicing. But I think if I would want to, this is like, I guess, more advice, which wasn't particularly what you asked for, but I would want to try and like, get myself to hopefully understand a little bit earlier the sort of ways I started to understand music in college, or just to understand like that it's okay for something to not be perfect. It's just about, yeah, like the flow of doing something, of just enjoying what you're doing, and that um and yeah, I don't know, I would probably want to talk to myself about things that I found funny. I would want to I'd want to know what I found funny. I think there would probably be some things that uh like I don't know. I would go back in time and steal comedy material from myself because I was too young to understand it and develop it. I don't know. But yeah, I think I would want to know my younger self's opinion on the things that I liked.
Yeah.
And if I could then use that to help me now to sort of like hear the enthusiasm I have about like things, particularly music and such. And whereas when I was younger, I didn't have the like ability or the mindset to really unleash the ideas and things that I wanted. but I definitely had the enthusiasm for it. So want to hear that, like, to recycle the term from before, like that, like blissfully ignorant enthusiasm, I guess. Yeah,
Would you say you lost that enthusiasm a bit now?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I kind of am like at an interesting state in my life where I'm realizing that like there's that sort of enthusiasm. It certainly can and will come back, but that like blissfully ignorant aspect of it that really made it like so pure, and
Mhm.
uh that's something that really can't come back naturally, you know. And yeah, so probably that's one of the helpful things about working with children, is that you're constantly exposed to that enthusiasm,
Mhm.
and you can kind of like photosynthesize it, I guess.
Have you worked with children
I did
before?
in,
Mm.
yeah, when I was in college on Long Island. I
Mm.
taught lessons private and through a store. It's probably something I would want to do again, but it has just been, I stopped doing it when I went to
Mhm.
BU, and then, you know, I, like with COVID. So it's been just a very long time. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you could borrow that enthusiasm from kids who aren't you
Yeah,
as a
exactly. Yeah.
child. So
I was
yeah,
kind of
it's interesting.
realizing, that as I was saying, like, oh, that's absolutely like one of the joys my parents
Mhm.
find in teaching. And like I'll hear my parents talk about like a book they've read, or something that, you know, and yeah, there's like enthusiasm in their voice about it. And that's probably, yeah, just being around these like, yeah, uh elementary school aged kids. It's probably, yeah, very like healing, I guess.
Mm. Yeah. I feel like that's a good place to end it. That's nice, like
Yeah.
note. And we're about an hour, I think. So thank you. That was
Yeah,
very nice. Is
absolutely.
there anything that you maybe feel like you want to add? Just some final thoughts, anything you thought of that you didn't have a chance to say?
I just think I'm very aware that I had a very good relationship with my parents all through childhood, that my parents raised me with, you know, good values, and that oftentimes if I find I'm having an issue, I'll often think back on those sorts of teachings. Some that I realize that uh, both my parents are very politically reasonable, but and so I guess I appreciated through meeting people who don't have the same relationship with their parents, and also sort of learning that it feels like that's not that's the norm, to sort of not have that, like, I guess I've learned, yeah, to really just appreciate it,
Mhm.
and to kind of, yeah, only like only now have I realized more, like, yeah, how good I had a lot of
Mhm.
things, and to, yeah, just be thankful, and to think about the way they talked about their parents, to, yeah, understand that they are like breaking a cycle, I guess, and yeah, that it's that is good. Once, like, I guess one cycle broken, and such. So
Yeah, it's really nice. I'm glad you had that experience.
yeah,
Yeah, great.
no, thanks
Okay.
for including me. I'm glad to
Yeah, thank you
help.
for agreeing. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
All right, we're gonna
Yeah.
end the recording.